Service back to pass, quick throw, complete,
Yes.
Touchdown Oilers.
A great route that time, and Jason Moore with a nice catch. And
It's Coach Keys Weekly on 88.3 WLFC.
Over the middle, intercepted by Chewy. Chewy across the 40.
Join Coach Keys and the Oilers on-air team as they take a look back at the week that was, discuss what's happening around the conference, and preview the week ahead.
Service throws, and caught late. Jason Moore went off of the front receiver's hands and right into Jason Moore's hands for the touchdown.
Now, let's join football head coach Rob Keys and the voice of Oiler football, Tim Montgomery.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Coach Keys Weekly here on 88.3 WLFC. Tim Montgomery here with the head coach of the Oilers, Rob Keys. And Oilers coming off of, I guess for lack of a better term, disappointing 20-17 loss. And Coach, obviously it's always disappointing to lose, but in a game that saw you dominate so many categories. And saw your defense, I think, have one of their best performances in your time here at the University of Findlay, and to come up 3 points short, which certainly was even more so disappointing.
Yeah, credit goes to Ferris State. I mean, they're a very, very good football team. They've won a lot of games in the last 4 years, and they're a top 10, team in the country. And I got to give them credit. I mean, they went out and they got the win. They did a little bit more than we did, and that's what allowed them to win, like I said, by 3 points. It's really disappointing because that's back-to-back years that we've lost to Ferris State by 3 points. And, the margin of error I mentioned all the time is so close. And once again, a couple mistakes by the coaches, by the players, execution, and boil it down, it just wasn't enough to get the win.
Yeah, a couple of things, as I said, you beat them in first downs, 22-21. You outgained them total yardage, 428 to 410. And yes, those are close numbers. But against a team like Ferris State that has put together, as you and I were just talking about a moment ago, 16 straight road wins, and you had back-to-back Harlan Hill winner, and all those other things, and the numbers are just astronomical since Tony Nisi got there. To be in that position is great, but at some point, this team's got to get over the hump.
Yeah, we got to get a win. I mean, it's basically, there are no more victories. We've talked about that quite a bit. And our guys, our staff, our players, and everybody involved in this program has to do a little bit more to get the win, because that's ultimately what we're shooting for. And coming up close is not good enough.
Well, you mentioned a couple plays here and there. Certainly a couple opportunities in the special teams with a couple of missed field goals, and it's really unfortunate. You and I were talking before we came on the air here, and if you would have told me that Tyler Bouget would struggle with field goals coming into the season, I would have told you crazy, because he was so solid a year ago. But that thing about kicking, it can be mentally can be such a fine line.
Yeah, I know. His first 2 seasons here, I know his first year he was 14 of 15 on field goals. He led the nation in field goal percentage. Last year he was perfect on extra points, and he's missed a couple close field goals that have been very costly for us. But anytime you don't score points, it's costly. And we have an opportunity in the red zone. Number one, we need to score more touchdowns, and that's one thing we didn't do against Ferris. And we need to do a much better job of capitalizing when we're down that close. But if we don't, we've relied on him to be that guy that gets us 3 points. And again, those 3 points, whether it was in that first half or the second half, the 2 missed field goals were very, very big.
Transverse that, a couple of other offensive plays. You're coming down, they come down and score on that opening drive. You had them 3rd and long on a couple occasions, just not able, and then he puts together a 49-yard, just pure scramble improvisation. You guys come back, look like you're getting ready to answer. You've got Anthony Federico, like you've had so many times before, wide open in the end zone, and just a little too high and a little too hot.
Yeah, and again, uncharacteristic of Reese at that point in time, because he's hit so many of those touchdowns. But, the game sways on a couple plays. We talk about that. About 4 or 5 plays ultimately determined the victory, and that was one of those. If you throw that touchdown there and you go 7-7, the way our defense was getting ready to play, I guess, at that point, because they really did. They did a great job performing this past week. It's one of the best defense performances I've seen in a while. And it's disappointing because we had some offensive opportunities, that one and a couple in the second half to capitalize, and just couldn't do it.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the defense, because, again, there are no moral victories. But, wow, what a performance by this team to hold a Ferris State team that's used to kicking out, 500- and 600-yard games, 410. But they were other than that opening drive, they really limited the opportunities that Ferris State had and the quarterback Bell had. And I really tip my hat to the defensive staff and to the players, because it was a great game plan that worked for all of, as you said, about 3 or 4 plays.
Yeah, and we talked about the defense, what they need to do going into the week, and we kind of joked, if we could hold them to about 14 points, that's like a shutout. And then if we can hold them to 20 points, that's probably a win for us. And I said, in the past 4 years, only 2 teams have held them under 30. And in both of those games, it was a 27-point game and a 24-point game, which Ferris won both of them. And I said, shoot, nobody's held them, under 3 touchdowns. And to hold them to 20 points is remarkable by the staff and by the players. I thought their intensity and their effort was there. They definitely kept a consistent play throughout, which has not been one of our trademarks. We've been very good on defense at times, but we've had lulls where we've give up big plays or drives. We responded after the big run, and really the defense did a heck of a job. The first series hurt us, and then the series after we went up, they scored on 3 plays, and it's a shame because the big long bubble screen up the sideline, we were in perfect position. We missed a tackle, and the one safety wasn't in the right spot, and it ends up going for 50 yards, and ended up scoring. But defensively, we play tough offenses every week, and every week we have to be better defensively than we were the week before, and that's what the whole goal was to be in the season. I think the defense has progressed from week 1 to week 5. I think they've gotten better. We've found a better combination at different spots, and our defensive front is playing very, very good right now.
Yeah, I want to come back to the defensive front, but I think that play you're talking about, the long bubble, is really kind of what you always talk about. The margin of error is so thin and so narrow. You're right. Everybody, you had a chance to have him for a loss of 3, and instead it ends up a plus 50 that sets up their go-ahead touchdown and really the end of the scoring for the game.
And nobody scored at that point. And you think about that. You tackle him there, and it's 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 8 at the worst, and you stop them and you get the ball back, then you're 1 series away from ending the game. But again, a missed tackle, just not wrapped up, and like I said, outside linebacker wasn't in the right fit at the point. He was inside as opposed to outside, and the ball goes for 50. And like I said, the difference between a TFL and a 50-yard gain, like I said, was so small.
You mentioned the defensive front, and I really did want to talk about them today. I thought a lot of great performance actually over the last couple of weeks, and one of the guys who's really jumped out to me is AC Limes. Really seems to be doing a great job on that defensive front. I want to talk about some other guys as well, though.
Yeah, AC's been very consistent. After transition over from tight end, this is his first time really playing a lot of defensive football, and I give the kid a lot of credit for not having a lot of experience playing that side of the ball. He's done really, really well. He's disciplined. He does exactly what you tell him, but you throw in the play of Mitch Campbell and Brad Fenton coming back off of injury was really, really good to have him back out there because he makes plays. And then, you have the interior guys with Ashton Elmore and Kyle Skidmore and Grant Kinziger and Deshaun Scott. And those guys, they are controlling the line of scrimmage. We've never had defensive tackles in the program like those 4 guys. And it's a shame because one of the better ones, Johnny Hopkins, is out for the year. You throw him in that mix, it's definitely our best front we've had since we've been here.
Yeah, you mentioned Mitchell Campbell. I was going to talk about him as well. Deshaun Scott, we talked about him a little bit last week, how he's really elevated his play this year. And Ashton Elmore, after the injury last year and having to sit out, he's really, I think the last couple of games has really started to find his rhythm and find, he was so touted coming in, and I think he's starting to find that rhythm.
Yeah, he is, and it's a shame because Ashton hadn't missed the Ashland game. And we definitely noticed him not being out there. And when he's out there, he might not make a ton of tackles, but his presence is felt because it's very difficult to move him, very difficult to run anywhere near him.
And then, of course, Kyle Skidmore as well, who just continues to impress. Came in as a freshman last year, was impressive, and he just keeps getting better. Another guy I wanted to talk about, go back a little bit, Miles Alexander, who's meant so much to this team over the years, but really, he's really, at least appears to be the emotional leader of that group.
He is. He's the captain of that defense. He's the emotional leader, but the biggest thing is he's very consistent, and that's what Miles has been. Every week you know what you get out of Miles Alexander, and that's quality play. He has so much experience. He's seen so many plays. There isn't a play that he hasn't seen, so nothing's going to be unfamiliar to him, and he does. He's making plays he should make, and he definitely has the motivation and the intensity that allows that defense to feed off of him.
And, talk about a couple other names real quick. And we've talked several times before, Anthony Lanier, of course. But Justice Jenkins, I find myself calling his name a little more often here recently as well.
Yeah, Justice and Anthony are pretty interchangeable. They're both about the same size. They have the both skill set, and they're both very explosive players. They play that outside backer spot for us. So that's one place we do have some very good depth. If Anthony's out there or Justice is out there, the standard's pretty much the same. So that's good to have that. It's just unfortunate we don't have more of those situations from a depth perspective where you can just plug the next guy in and have that high quality of performance.
We talked about Aaron Ivory last week, but Chewy also seems to just keep being consistent out there with his things. And then Francis Kutchember, I don't know how many times we've said his name as being the guy who made that last tackle that just had to be made to keep things where you needed him to be.
Yeah, Francis, again, played as a freshman last year, and he's still learning, but his experience is so valuable, and he's getting better every week. And that's what young players do. They grow so fast because they start to see things they haven't seen. And definitely he takes coaching. He's also a very intense, emotional player, and guys feed off of him. Chewy had a rough go at the ODU game, but since then has really, really picked his play back up to what we expected from last season. But, same thing at corner, those spots. That's a tough position to play, and you have to be right about 99% of the time at the cornerback position.
All right. Unfortunately, despite the great performance by the defense, a 2017 loss, we'll go ahead and put that in the books. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about this week's opponent. And as we say all year, and it's absolutely true, it doesn't get any easier. Wayne State Warriors coming into Donnell Stadium. We'll talk about when we return on Coach Keys Weekly here on 88.3 WLFC.
Service back to pass, quick throw, touchdown Oilers.
Saturday afternoon, the Oilers are at home, hosting the Warriors from Wayne State University.
Over the middle, intercepted by Chewy.
Tim Montgomery will have all the action from Donnell Stadium. Pre-game at 11:45, kickoff at noon.
Service throws, caught late, and right into Jason Moore's hands for the touchdown.
Yeah. This is your home for Oiler football, 88.3 WLFC.
Welcome back to Coach Keys Weekly here on 88.3 WLFC. Tim Montgomery and Rob Keys. And Oilers stay at home this week, and they'll also be home next week as well. But this week, Wayne State Warriors come into town, and this was a weird game a year ago, Coach, up in Detroit. You guys found yourselves down early. You came back, you battled back, and then just not able to get over the hump. But this Wayne State team has managed to get really good. They've really improved since last season.
Yeah, they're if you look at their roster, it's chock full of fifth-year seniors. I think they have 20 fifth-year seniors on a team, not fourth year. These guys have been in the program for 5 years. So from a vet perspective, they're probably the most experienced team in the GLIAC, and guys that I keep, I've seen them year in and year out. It's the same names. You look at last year's depth chart of Wayne State, offense and defensively, it's pretty much the exact same team that we faced a year ago. They were all juniors last year. They're all seniors this year. They felt going into the year that they were one of the top teams in the GLIAC, and they feel that they're a playoff and a conference contender, and right now they put themselves right in the picture. I mean, they're 4-1. They've dominated pretty much every game with the exception of their loss. And in that loss, they had Ashland on the ropes in the first half, and Ashland made a few more plays and got the momentum in that second half and really took it away from them. But again, it was at Ashland. That's a tough place to play. But right now, I mean, if you look at the top teams, it's tough to separate the Grand Valleys, the Ferris States, the Ashlands, the Wayne States. They're all about the same. They really are. They're very, very talented. They're very deep, and they have what it takes to make a run towards the conference title and a playoff run too.
Well, I mentioned last year's game because of that reason there that you talked about, so many guys returning from that team. But the other reason is they still have stuck with that formula. They're outscoring teams 87-7 in the first quarter. And then in the first half, second quarter, it's 42-16. And then they actually end up usually getting outscored in the second half. But it's because they take care of their business. They are that quick strike. They get on you. That defense grinds you up, and you find yourself down before you know it.
Yeah, if you look at their offense, they have more explosive plays than anybody we've seen up to date. I mean, they hit big runs. They hit big passes. They have explosive, very fast receivers on the edge. And they have, one of the best tailbacks in the league in Romello Brown, and then his complement is Demetrius Stinson. I mean, both of those kids are phenomenal tailbacks. Romello is just he really looks like Jerome Bettis. I mean, he's 250 pounds. He's got very light feet, And he can run it between the tackles, but he could pop it outside because he has very, very good speed. And last year he hurt us, especially as that game wore on. And that's what big backs do. They get to the point where you could stop him for a little bit, but eventually that size and that power takes over. And they do a good job with the scheme. But where it all starts, I hate to say it, is up front. They're all seniors up front. Thaker, the left tackle, is a grad student who was injured last year, and he's one of the best offensive linemen in the GLIAC. So, their front is very physical. They're violent kids. They love the aspect of I get to knock somebody in their back and then smash them when they're down, and that's how they play. But at the same time, they'll throw it at you, and then you'll see the play action. And Zazula, the quarterback, is a great deep ball thrower, and he's got some targets on the outside.
Well, you mentioned Romello Brown. For me, at least, he was somewhat reminiscent of Joyke Bell when he was at Wayne State. Same kind of guy who could just hammer you, and then when you're so focused on him coming between those tackles, that he'll bounce to the outside, and before you know it, he's like a bowling ball going downhill.
He is, and he's very difficult to stop. The one thing we have to do is we got to get him before he gets started, because if he gets his shoulders square and through the line of scrimmage, you're tackling him, but he's falling forward for 3, 4, 5, 6 yards, or you're missing the tackle when he's running for 50. So we have to do a really good job of fitting our gaps and playing downhill and really stopping that run, because if we don't stop the run, we're not going to stop anything. So it's not giving away our trade secrets and game plan, but we have to stop Romello Brown in that offensive line from pushing us around.
You mentioned Zazula, and I thought a year ago he was inconsistent, I think would be the word I would have used for him. He really seems to have cleaned up his play, and as you said, he's turned into a pretty good deep ball thrower.
He has, and he's got some targets, and he's got some weapons. But same thing, he got a chance to start all last year, and there's no greater teacher than experience, and he has the experience now, and he doesn't have to win all the games. They're very, very talented on both sides of the ball, and he needs to do his job, and that's a good place to be as a quarterback.
You mentioned the targets. Jamel Hicks is his favorite. 5 touchdown catches, almost 500 yards, and he averages 24 yards a catch. He is really a big play kind of guy.
He is. He's got a lot of speed, and I know that if we're covering him, we better know where he is, because that's where the ball is going to go a lot of times, especially when they need the big play. So it is. It's a very difficult offense to defend because of the versatility and being able to, like I said, they'll pound it in there. They'll be in 2 tights and 2 backs and run power. And then the next series, they're in 3 and 4 wides and they're spreading it out too. So we got our hands full defensively. But the same thing, we got to control what we control. And the one thing I think we need to do that we didn't do as well last week is be better tacklers. I thought we missed some tackles that hurt us in the Ferris State game, especially in the first drive, especially in the last touchdown drive. So, tackling needs to be at a premium. It needs to be at 95% efficiency, because if it's not, those little plays that with the missed tackles, they go from 5 to 10, end up being 40 or 50 for Wayne State.
Transition, you talk about it. Defense is a really nice, the style of defense they play is a really nice complement to what they're doing offensively. And a couple of numbers jumped out at me. 37 tackles for loss for 143 yards. Throwing 16 sacks for 84 yards. They are really getting in the backfield. They are really dominating that line of scrimmage.
If you look at it too, they're very good up front. Jake Carrizales, the defensive end, is a very, very physical and a quick, explosive player at the end spot. And then they have the linebackers in there. Anthony Dadamos is in there, number 44. He's been back. He's been playing for I don't know how many years.
Like
He's so
10.
consistent.
Feels
like 10. I mean, but if you watch them, they're so aggressive. They're going to blitz you probably half the time, and they pick their blitzes at the right times. And they have very good corners on the edge to cover. But the thing that they do, like I said, it's the aggressive attack style defense that puts opponents behind the chains. And I know one thing: if we end up with a lot of 2nd and 10s and 2nd and 9s, which lead to 3rd and 7 pluses, it's going to be a long day for us. We got to get ahead of the chains.
You mentioned the blitzing, and they get creative with those blitzes as well. They're not afraid to bring the corners and drop linebackers off, even drop occasionally some of those defensive linemen off into the flats for coverage. I mean, they get very creative with some of those, at least in the film I've seen.
Yeah, they do. They run, they'll be in the even package as well as the odd, so their front will change. And they do have some exotic blitzing. They bring a lot of pressure they'll bring 4 to one side where it's very difficult to pick up. And like I said, the first down is so important for us. If we can get to the point where we're 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5, it will definitely at least slow them down somewhat and allow us to maybe convert on some first downs. And that's what happened last year. We turned the ball over early in the first quarter, which really put us behind in the game, and it really hurt us, even though the defense played really well in that first quarter to kind of keep it close. But too many times in that game, we found ourselves with that 3rd and 6 plus, 3rd and 7 plus. And when you're in that situation, it's so hard to protect the quarterback. I know Reese took some serious shots in that game and was rattled. And that's what they do. And like I said, if we can keep him upright for a large percentage of the game, that we'll have a chance to at least move the ball.
There's two things there, and both of them were a bit of a struggle a week ago. One is keeping Reese up, 4 sacks, very brutal, but also, talk about first down, it's about trying to be successful there, getting that running game balance, and never really with any consistency, as you pointed out in post-game last week, not able to do that. That's going to be key, getting some consistent running game, and as you say, being able to keep Reese up on his feet.
Yeah, the consistency in the running game, getting those tailbacks through that first level without getting touched and getting them to let them make some plays is very important to us. And blocking the front, people will overload the box, and we got to make sure we block the guys we're supposed to, at least get it to that second level. But it starts up front, and the inexperience up front with the center, Neil Davis, a true freshman, and the 2 guys on the edge starting for the first time with Christian and Andrew Dickinson. This is game 6 now, and I have seen them get better week to week to week. And hopefully, like I said, that they'll continue to improve, because if they can improve as they've been, and they play better this week than they did the week before, and they did the week before, then we'll be able to run the ball a little more effectively.
Well, let's go ahead and run the keys, and we've kind of talked about them indirectly. Let's start with each one of the parts of the game. Let's start off on the offense, the big key on the offense.
The big thing on offense is not turn the ball over. I mean, we're right now we're -5 in the turnover battle, and in critical games against Ohio Dominican and Ferris State, we turn the ball over. And when you turn the ball over against any team, it gives you, the percentage of winning just goes dramatically down. And we have to protect the ball. If we don't turn the ball over, like I said, we have such a better chance of winning the game. So I think our offense, even being balanced, which we talk about all the time, we got to protect football. And we got to make sure that if we're giving it to them, we're giving it to them on a punt or we're kicking off.
And then on the other side, I think you kind of talked about earlier, let's talk about defense.
Yeah, defensively, it's kind of the role reversal. We've forced some fumble this year, but we haven't had any interceptions. We've had 2 picks all season, and when the ball's in the air, we're going to need to get a few interceptions, because it gets that quarterback doubting himself and questioning whether or not maybe I should throw this ball, or anybody hold on to it a little longer, and then you end up getting a sack. And I think that the takeaway battle, defensively we need to do that. But along with that, we have to stop the run. We have to be able to limit that run game and not let them, like I said, get ahead of the chains and have 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3, because that's when you end up hitting the big plays.
And then, of course, finish up special teams.
Yeah, we need to make some field goals. It's just, in scoring situations, we got to do it, because right now, I'm pleased with the return game. I think Troy Robinson has been doing a really good job back there in punt return. Our kickoff returns have been pretty adequate. Nothing great, but good to live with. And Patrick Rusher has been consistent. The one thing, it's a pretty neat stat. We've gone 5 games now, and not one person has had an opportunity to return a punt against us. It's all been fair catches or down punts. So that's always a plus when you can flip the field and also pin those guys inside the 10.
All right, Coach, as always, appreciate your time, and let's go out and get a win.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, so that's going to wrap up Coach Key's Weekly for this week. Oilers in action back home at Donnell Stadium, 12 o'clock kickoff. We'll have our pregame about 11:45. If you can't join us at the stadium, hope you join us on air right here on 88.3 WLFC. Going to wrap things up for Coach Keys. I'm Tim Montgomery. See you next time for Oiler Football on WLFC.
Service back to pass, quick throw, complete,
Yes.
Touchdown Oilers.
A great route that time, and Jason Moore with a nice catch. And
Thank you for listening to Coach Keys Weekly.
Over the middle, intercepted by Chewy. Chewy across the 40.
Tune in every Tuesday night during the season for your connection to Coach Keys and Oiler football.
Service throws, and caught late. Went off of the front receiver's hands and right into Jason Moore's hands for the touchdown.
This is your home for Oiler football. 88.3 WLFC.